If I stop uploading here, you can find me via my website in the description below. Chapter 1. 1484. A Chance for Escape. Almost in the exact instant that Han Li flew into the distance, another group of sinister ghosts with crimson bodies and green hair charged out from the nearby mist, only to be completely dumbfounded by the lack of targets to attack. At this point, Han Li was already over 10,000 feet away, and through the use of his spirit eyes, he was able to avoid several large-scale battles in succession as he attempted to fly out of this mist. If he encountered a small group of ghostly beings, then he'd kill them on the spot. Conversely, if he encountered large hordes of them, then he'd take evasive measures instead. Thus, Han Li managed to traverse relatively smoothly through the yin mist. However, it didn't take long before Han Li lost all sense of direction. As such, he could only take a risk to fly higher up into the air and ascertain his position from a higher vantage point. Thus, he flew to altitudes of several thousand feet where the mist was slightly thinner. But he was immediately beset with countless attacks that rained down from above. Thankfully, he had prepared his divine essence-fused light in advance, and he hurriedly swept aside most of these attacks with his divine essence-fused light. Otherwise, he would have most likely been forced to plummet straight to the ground. Even so, he had still been given a massive fright. Before the next wave of attacks could arrive, he flew back down into the denser mist again. It appeared that it would be impossible for him to fly up to an altitude that would make a substantial difference in his situation. As such, he could only decide on a certain direction and plunge headfirst into the mist. However, it was either the case that this mist had been imbued with some kind of profound restriction, or it truly did cover an extraordinarily vast area. In any case, even after several hours, he was still trapped within the mist, without any signs of being close to the edge. Han Li's expression was growing darker as time passed by. He swept a sleeve through the air, and several golden threads shot forth, instantly slicing in the ghostly shadows before him into several pieces. However, those ghostly shadows merely recovered amid a burst of unsettling howls before pouncing toward Han Li again. Han Li harumphed coldly as he opened his mouth to blast forth a ball of silver flames. The fireball then exploded into several smaller fireballs, completely incinerating the ghostly shadows into nothingness amid cries of anguish. These formless ghosts were rather difficult to deal with for normal cultivators, but they were naturally completely powerless in the face of Han Li's spirit-engulfing heavenly flames. After eradicating this wave of ghostly beings, Han Li looked up and was just about to decide on a direction to fly toward, when an earth-shattering boom suddenly erupted from another direction, and even the nearby ground tremored violently as a result. Ball of black flames shot forth in all directions in the distance, and an indistinct female cry of shock and fury could be heard. Han Li's expression faltered slightly as he turned toward that direction. That voice was rather familiar. It seemed to belong to Yuan Yao. Could it be that she was engaged in battle here? Even though Han Li couldn't be sure of this, he still flew toward that direction as a streak of azure light after a brief pause for contemplation. The black fireballs hadn't exploded very far away from Han Li, so it only took him moments to cover the distance of tens of thousands of feet as a streak of azure light. Thereby arriving near the area, Han Li focused his gaze up ahead, upon which his expression changed slightly. Over 1,000 feet away from him, there were several hundred crimson skeletons with disproportionately massive and thin and long limbs shooting one crimson arrow after another, surrounding and attack over 100 yin armor profound ghosts. At the center of these profound ghosts, two black-robed women stood, one with a small black vial in her hand, while the other was wielding a black banana leaf fan. They were unleashing balls of black flames with those treasures to assist the ghostly soldiers, trying to keep the barrage of attacks from the crimson skeletons at bay with all their might. The black flames were quite powerful, and the long weapons being wielded by the yin armor profound ghosts were certainly nothing to be scoffed at either. But their opponents were even more bizarre. Not only were these skeletons able to leap astonishing distances like grasshoppers, they moved like the wind, and the crimson arrows they unleashed seemed to be able to somewhat repress the black flames as well as the yin winds from the weapons of the profound ghosts, with several hundred skeletons attacking in unison. Most of the black flames were forcibly doused before even reaching their targets. Even the skeletons that were struck by stray wisps of these black flames merely stumbled and slowed down slightly. but they didn't appear to have been severely injured at all. Meanwhile, these crimson arrows were also very effective against the yin armor profound ghosts. The black suits of armor worn by these ghostly soldiers had certain defensive properties, but after being struck by about a dozen arrows, the armor would undoubtedly be shattered, and the ghostly soldier would also dissipate as balls of black chi. By the time Han Li had reached the scene, the two black-robed women were desperately unleashing the powers of their treasures, and 7 or 8 more of the ghostly soldiers around them were felled in the blink of an eye. Their situation was a very perilous one. These two women were naturally none other than Yuan Yao and Yan Li. Han Li narrowed his eyes to inspect his surroundings, but didn't discover any other powerful ghosts lurking nearby. Thus he stepped in without any further hesitation. He flapped his wings and abruptly disappeared on the spot, appearing in the air above the two women in the next instant. He swept his sleeve through the air, and 72 golden flying swords shot forth, transforming into several hundred streaks of golden sword chi that rained down in a torrential downpour. Any crimson skeletons that were struck by the sword chi were sliced into countless pieces like a hot knife through butter. However, an extremely harrowing scene then immediately ensued. Crimson light flashed from the surface of the remains of all of the crimson skeletons, and they all disintegrated into balls of blood-like liquid. They then converged to form a massive, vibrant, red, ghostly being. Han Li raised his eyebrows upon seeing this, and he raised a pristine white hand before thrusting his pal toward the giant crimson ghost that was slowly taking shape. All of a sudden, 5 large skeleton progesitons appeared above his fingertips, following which a vast expanse of 5-colored glacial flames came crashing down. As soon as the glacial flames inundated the giant crimson ghost, it was transformed into a huge ice sculpture and was completely immobilized as a result. Han Li then flicked a finger to send forth an arc of golden lightning that struck the ice sculpture amid a loud thunderclap. The ice sculpture was instantly shattered by the arc of lightning, and the massive ghostly being was slain before it even had a chance to unleash any of its powers. Yen Yao and Yan Li had witnessed everything from down below, and their mouths had gaped open with shock. These ghostly beings had almost been the death of them, yet Han Li had eradicated all of them in virtually the blink of an eye. That was downright astonishing to them. Yan Li was the first one to recover her composure, and she hurriedly extended a curtsy toward Han Li with a smile on her face. "Thank you for saving us, Brother Han." The astonishment on Yuan Yao's face was also replaced by a gorgeous smile that resembled the beauty of countless exuberant flowers blossoming at once. "If you'd come here any later, we'd most likely have been dead already, Brother Han." Even Han Li was slightly entranced by her smile, but he quickly composed himself before asking, "Why are the two of you here? Weren't you with one of the demon monarchs? And what about these ghostly soldiers? Weren't our with Fairy Mu Qing as well, Brother Han? We were separated in the same way that you were separated from everyone else. As for these yin armor profound ghosts, the two of us participated in their refinement process, so we're able to control some of them. However, these are all that's left of the profound ghosts under our control, and it was all thanks to their protection that we were able to survive to this point." Yan Li explained with a smile. This ambush was most likely led by a ghostly being with an extremely high level of intelligence. Otherwise, there was no way that such a massive and organized trap could have been sprung. "They clearly want to kill all of us in one fell swoop," Han Li said with a nod of his head. Yuan Yao's face paled slightly, and she chewed down on her lower lip before asking, "Your analysis is quite plausible. Brother Han, what do you intend to do now? We've been surrounded by far too many ghostly beings for us to kill." Han Li didn't give a direct reply. Instead, a peculiar look appeared on his face as he said, "Have you not noticed? Up to this point, we've only encountered low-grade and mid-grade ghostly beings, but we haven't even seen a single high-grade ghost. What you're saying is—" Yan Li faltered slightly before catching the gist of Han Li's words. "That's right, those spatial tempering stage ghostly beings are most likely busy battling Liu Zhu and the others. Otherwise, even if just a few of them were to appear, we'd be in severe danger," Han Li mused as he stroked his chin. "What are you trying to say, Brother Han? Please make yourself clearer," Yuan Yao prompted. "I simply think that the situation is not looking very good, and it's also quite chaotic, but at the same time, it also presents to us a brilliant opportunity to get away from the demon monarchs," Han Li said in a slow voice. So what you're suggesting is— Yan Li's smile faded and was replaced by a grim expression. That's right. If we can get out of this place, then the demon monarchs won't be able to come after us. We just have to find a place where pure yin qi has materialized so we can wipe away the tracking marks in my body. With the size of the infernal river, even if the demon monarchs try to come after us. It'd be like searching for a needle in a haystack, Han Li proposed. Yuan Yao and Yan Li glanced at one another, and both of them were quite tempted by this proposition. After holding a brief discussion through voice transmission, the two women finally made up their minds. All right, we'll do as you say, Brother Han. Here in this infernal river, the two of us are in constant peril, and we'd also like nothing better than to get away from these demon monarchs. A hint of elation flashed through Han Li's eyes, but he quickly furrowed his brows in with concern again. Now that we're on the same page, the first hurdle in our way is this ghostly mist. I've been searching for a way out for hours to no avail. You're troubled by this ghostly mist, Brother Han, with our pitiful powers. We wouldn't be able to provide assistance in many other areas. But don't forget that junior martial sister Yuan and I are using ghost Dao cultivation arts, and we also possess semi-ghostly bodies. Yan Li chuckled upon hearing this. Han Li faltered slightly initially before his expression lit up with elation. Are you saying you have a way to get out of this place, fellow Taoist Yan? The yin-yang reincarnation arts that we're cultivating may not be extremely useful in battle, but it's provided us with many other abilities. All you have to do is follow us, and we'll lead you out of this ghostly mist. In reality, we were planning to escape from this mist as well, but we were unable to do so as we kept on being attacked by ghostly beings. Yuan Yao explained with a slightly smug expression on her face. Chapter 1. 1485 White Shadow. Han Li repressed the excitement in his heart as he said, it wouldn't be wise to delay any longer. So let's leave right away. Otherwise, we're only going to be attacked by more of those ghostly beings. The two women had no objections to this, and they immediately departed with what remained of their ghostly soldiers. Along the way, Yuan Yao and Yan Li gathered together, holding hands mid-flight as they began to chant something in unison. Black and white spiritual light then flashed from their bodies, following which they opened their mouths to expel a bead, each one of which was black, while the other was white. The two beads then combined as one to form a fist-sized black and white eyeball. Meanwhile, Yan Li and Yuan Yao both closed their eyes, but the black and white eyeball glanced around at their surroundings, before immediately leading the trio toward a certain direction. Han Li was a little skeptical of this strange secret technique, but he could only follow the two women. Brother Han, using our Ghost Dao secret technique, will be able to escape this ghostly mist, but we can't change directions along the way. Otherwise, all of our prior efforts would go to waste. Yan Li suddenly cautioned. Han Li's expression changed slightly upon hearing this, and he asked, does that mean that if we encounter any other ghostly beings along the way, we'll have to force our way through them? That's right. Now you should know why we were still unable to escape from this mist, even with this secret technique. Yan Li replied with a wry smile. As long as we don't encounter any beings of the same caliber as the demon monarchs, we'll just have to crash right through them. All of the truly powerful ghostly beings should be engaged in battle with the demon monarchs anyway, so we shouldn't encounter any substantial obstacles. Han Li chuckled coldly. Even though Yan Li had seen Han Li in action not long ago, she was still surprised by how confident he was, and a peculiar look appeared on her face. Han Li immediately identified the skepticism in her eyes and asked, do you think I'm being overconfident? Fellow Taoist Yen, that's not the case. I'm not overly familiar with you, but I've heard on countless occasions from my junior martial sister about your ability to easily slay beings of the same cultivation base in the human world. Yan Li chuckled with pursed lips. Han Li was rather surprised to hear this, and he cast a glance at Yuan Yao just in time to see a faint blush appear on her cheeks. Han Li fell silent thereafter. Fellow Taoist Han, for you to be so confident surely indicates that your powers are comparable to that of a spatial tempering stage being. Right, Yan Li asked. As long as we don't encounter any late spatial tempering stage beings, I can put up a fight, Han Li replied calmly. This was not the time for excessive modesty, so he merely told the truth. Tisk tisk. I really don't understand how you were able to cultivate your abilities. Back when junior martial sister Yuan and I first met you, you were still a chi condensation cultivator. Yet you're now as powerful as spatial tempering stage beings. When I think about it, it feels like I'm in a dream. Yan Li clicked her tongue with wonder. Why do you sound so sad, fellow Taoist Yan? Han Li asked. Not really, it's just that both my junior martial sister and I cultivated the yin-yang reincarnation arts. And I'm not sure whether this is a blessing or a curse, nor how we're supposed to progress in our future cultivation. Will we be forced to convert ourselves completely into ghostly beings and forego our humanity just to further our cultivation path? Yan Li heaved a forlorn sigh. Yen Yao's expression also became rather downcast upon hearing this. Han Li's brows furrowed, and he was silent for a moment before speaking again. I don't know much about ghost Dao cultivation arts, but what I do know is that the spirit realm is a land of miracles. Even those without spiritual roots can attain them here. And as long as you two haven't completely become ghostly beings, there should be a way to recover your former bodies, given the countless incredible secret techniques in the spirit realm. Is that true? Is there really a way for us to return to our former bodies in this spirit realm? Both Yuan Yao and Yan Li were ecstatic to hear this. Your yin-yang reincarnation arts are indeed quite unique, but I don't think it's an irreversible cultivation art. If I'm not mistaken, you two should be able to recover your former human bodies as long as you dissipate the yin qi within your bodies. However, the process will most likely be quite painful and arduous, and your cultivation bases will most likely be damaged as well. As for the specific method to accomplish this, it's best to do some thorough research on the matter after we return to human race territory. Han Li said in a meaningful voice. If we can recover our former human bodies, having to endure some pain and sacrifice some of our cultivation bases is nothing. Yuan Yao replied in a resolute manner. Yan Li also nodded in agreement. Han Li smiled in response, yet just as he was about to say something else, his expression abruptly darkened as he disappeared into the mist up ahead as a streak of azure light. The two women faltered momentarily before glancing at one another. Moments later, ghostly howls erupted from the mist up ahead, following which a dozen or so streaks of grey yin qi burst into the air. However, the commotion abruptly subsided after a few streaks of golden sword qi vanquished these streaks of yin qi. Han Li then returned to the two women as a streak of azure light. Let's keep going. Those were just a few ordinary ghostly beings, Han Li said in a calm manner. Ordinary Yan Li and Yuan Yao were both completely speechless. They weren't able to witness the battle that had just taken place due to the dense mist in their path. But those streaks of yin qi were extremely powerful and clearly not something normal ghostly beings were capable of unleashing. The fact that Han Li was able to vanquish them so easily further cemented their belief in him. Thus, they continued to focus on controlling the eyeball they'd conjured up, searching for the correct route to take. Along the way, all of the ghostly beings they encountered were slain in mere moments by Han Li. They'd even stumbled upon a few relative large-scaled battles between the Earth Abyss demon beasts and other ghostly beings. But Han Li was still able to lay waste to those ghostly beings in what seemed like the blink of an eye to carve out a path. The two women and the remaining ghostly soldiers continued onward. The Earth Abyss demon beasts had thought that their saviors had arrived, only for Han Li's trio to quickly disappear into the distance, and after a brief period of dumbstruck inactivity, they could only continue to fight for their lives. Han Li's trio enjoyed relatively look along their journey, encountering no troublesome ghosts, nor large hordes of ghostly beings, thereby allowing them to progress in a smooth manner. Several hours later, the mist around them finally began to thin out, and the ghostly beings they encountered also became fewer and far in between. Han Li and the others were naturally ecstatic to see this. They knew that they'd taken the right route and were close to the edge of the mist. After slaying a few more ghostly beings, Han Li was just about to lead the two women and the ghostly soldiers on a final charge when his expression suddenly changed, and he abruptly came to a halt as a grim expression appeared on his face. Wen Yao's heart jolted upon seeing this, and she asked, "What is it, Brother Han?" Yan Li also looked on with bewilderment in her eyes. Unfortunately, their spiritual sense was rather limited, so they weren't able to glean the scenes up ahead. "Looks like leaving this place won't be so easy after all," Han Li replied expressionlessly. Right at this moment, a female giggling voice suddenly sounded from within the thin mist up ahead. The giggling grew louder and louder, reaching them in the blink of an eye and ringing out in all directions. Yanli and Yuan Yao initially paid no heed to this. After all, with their semi-ghostly bodies, such simple ghost Dao captivation techniques wouldn't be able to harm them in the slightest. However, within moments from when the laughter first erupted around them, the two women were suddenly struck by a sense of feebleness, and their eyelids drooped as if they'd suddenly become countless times heavier. Wenyu reacted quite quickly, forcibly retaining a hint of clarity in her mind to try and repress this debilitating sensation. However, when she tried to summon the yin power within her body, her heart immediately sank as panic surged through her heart. She discovered that there wasn't a single trace of yin power left for her to draw upon. What's going on? Yuan Yao knew that her current condition definitely had something to do with what giggling female voice, but the overwhelming wave of sleepiness was too much for her to resist. Her eyes slowly fell shut, and her body swayed as if she were about to collapse at any moment. Yanli was in the same boat, and some of the yin armor profound ghosts had even dropped their weapons before plummeting from the sky. Humph! A cold harumph suddenly sounded from beside them. Even though the voice wasn't very loud, it was particularly clear to the two women, and both of them felt a sharp pain in their spiritual sense in unison. The two of them shivered as their drowsiness completely faded, and at the same time, yin power began to surge through their bodies. Yen Yao was elated to have to escape that ordeal, and she immediately summoned a protective layer of grey spiritual light around her body. She turned to discover that Yan Li had done the same thing, and even the profound ghosts that were falling out of the sky were rising into the air again. Yuan Yao heaved a sigh of relief before turning to Han Li, who remained as still and stalwart as a mountain. It was quite clear that he was the one who had saved them from that crisis. At this moment, Han Li stood in a completely expressionless manner, completely unaffected by the ghostly giggling around him. All of a sudden, blue light flashed through his eyes, and he abruptly swept a sleeve through the air, sending a streak of sword chi hurtling toward a certain spot in the air. A faint white shadow suddenly appeared in the spot where the golden sword chi had just passed through. The white shadow twisted its body slightly, and the sword chi flashed past without inflicting any harm to it. Han Li's expression changed slightly as one of his hands turned black, while the other turned white, and he thrust his palms through the air like lightning. A vast expanse of grey light and a burst of 5-colored flames immediately appeared out of thin air above the white shadow, then swept downward in unison. The two powers created an inescapable net that afforded the white shadow no avenue for evasion. Yuan Yao and Yan Li were elated to see this. They'd witnessed Han Li unleash these two abilities on multiple occasions, and all of the ghostly beings that had been struck by them had been instantly eradicated. However, the scenes that unfolded next caused their expressions to stiffen. The white shadow let loose a low chuckle before splitting into 4 parts, then further dividing into 8 parts. In the blink of an eye, faint white shadows had appeared all over that area, and they were still multiplying relentlessly as if there were no end to them. And many of those white shadows had appeared outside the area, enshrouded under the grey light and 5-colored flames. Yuan Yao and Yan Li glanced at one another upon seeing this, only to find their own astonishment mirrored in each other's eyes. Chapter 1. 1486 Female Ghost. Han Li's pupils contracted upon seeing this, but he quickly made a hand seal, and the grey light, as well as the 5-colored flames, suddenly dispersed, transforming into countless grey threads and streaks of fiery 5-colored light that rained down from above. The white shadows that were struck by those attacks instantly vanished, but the remaining white shadows continued to multiply relentlessly. Grey threads and 5-colored light encompassed most of the entire sky, but the white shadows simply refused to be completely exterminated. Not only were Yuan Yao and Yan Li stunned to see this, even Han Li was a little dumbstruck. However, right at this moment, his spiritual sense detected something, and his body blurred as he turned around in a flash to face behind him. He then fixed his gaze on a patch of empty space nearby, and a cold expression flashed through his eyes as a gash appeared on his glabella. The gash split open, following which a black eyeball emerged from within. It was none than his Law Destruction eye. Having been nurtured for so many years, the eyeball had become darker and darker, and at this point, the mere sight of it made the beholder feel as if their soul were being sucked out of their bodies. Black light flashed deep within the eyeball, following which a pillar of light as thick as a human thumb shot forth, then disappeared into that patch of space in a flash. A resounding boom erupted, and the nearby space twisted and warped. Immediately thereafter, a black ball of light that was several tens of feet in radius appeared out of thin air, then disappeared in a flash. At the same time, a white shadow stumbled out of that patch of empty space, then hurtled back to over 100 feet away. At this point, the white shadow was no longer as blurry and indistinct as it had been before. Instead, its appearance had become very clear. It was a woman dressed in a set of white robes. The robe was shimmering with light and completely pristine and spotless, seemingly having remained completely unscathed in the aftermath of that explosion. The woman herself was quite tall and slender, with a curvaceous body and a head of glossy black hair. Due to the fact that she had her head lowered, Han Li was unable to glean her true features, but she appeared to be quite a beauty. Han Li appraised this woman through narrowed eyes, and a wary expression appeared on his face. He had just attempted to sweep his spiritual sense toward her, only to have it repelled by her white robes, thereby thwarting his attempt to ascertain her cultivation base. However, he could tell from that previous clash that this was most definitely not some kind of normal high-grade ghostly being. Just as the woman had been forced out of space by Han Li's Law Destruction Eye, the white shadows on the other end that were relentlessly multiplying finally all disappeared. Han Li waved a hand without even turning his head, and the grey light along with the 5 coloured flames in that direction also vanished. A burst of unsettling giggles suddenly escaped from the woman's mouth, and she raised an arm before grabbing the air toward Han Li in a seemingly harmless gesture. However, her arm, along with the sleeve of the white robe, abruptly disappeared amid a flash of white light. Han Li couldn't help but falter slightly upon seeing this, but before he had figured out what was going on, the arm that had just vanished suddenly reappeared right in front of him. The sleeve on the arm was rolled up, revealing a set of white bony claws that flashed over to Han Li's neck as if by instantaneous teleportation, then made a vicious grab for his throat. Cold light of around an inch in length shimmered from the tips of each of the 5 claws. Ah! Even Han Li was given a massive fright by this sudden turn of events, and the claws were far too fast for him to evade or defend himself against. Thus the bony claws grabbed onto Han Li's throat amid a dull thump. But in the instant that they made contact with his skin, golden light flashed from Han Li's neck of its own accord, following which a few golden scales appeared. The sharp bone claws were repelled amid a flash of golden light. Han Li also stumbled back a couple of steps, but thankfully his throat remained completely unscathed, having been protected by those golden scales. A thunderous expression appeared on Han Li's face as he rapidly swept a sleeve through the air, sending forth a streak of golden light that instantly swept up the white arm. Golden light flashed as the entire arm was completely inundated by streaks of sword chi. The golden sword chi struck the arm with all their might, but they were only able to cause a few ripples to appear on the white sleeve of the robe, while the arm itself remained completely unscathed. Han Li's expression changed slightly, and he immediately opened his mouth to blast forth a ball of silver flames. However, it was too late. The white-robed woman had recovered from the shock of her failed attack, and she shrugged her shoulder, upon which the white arm that had been detached from her body abruptly disappeared, leaving the silver fireball to strike nothing but empty air. At the same time, white light flashed by the white-robed woman's side, and her arm returned to her body. Han Li took a deep breath upon seeing this before rustling a sleeve, and 4 or 5 azure beads rolled soundlessly into his hand. At the same time, spiritual light flashed from his wrist, and a palm-sized spirit beast bracelet appeared in his other hand. This ghostly possessed extremely bizarre and troublesome abilities, and Han Li didn't want to take any further risks. As such, he was planning to immediately summon his weeping soul beast, then assist the beast by attacking the white-robed woman with his lightning beads to end this battle as quickly as possible. This was not a time where he could afford lengthy delays. The white-robed woman seemed to have realized that Han Li was quite a formidable opponent, and she wasn't in a hurry to attack again. Instead, she slowly raised her head to reveal her true appearance. Ah! Yan Li and Yuan Yao had just been flabbergasted by the rapid series of blows traded between Han Li and the white-robed woman, and both of them suddenly let loose involuntary cries of surprise upon seeing the woman's true appearance. Han Li also drew a sharp breath at the sight of her facial features. An extremely terrifying half of her face was laid out before his eyes. One half of the face was covered in shriveled, eerie green skin, while the other half of the face was comprised of fair, delicate skin and half of a pair of supple red lips, the kind that one would expect from an exquisite beauty. The ghostly being's eyes were both green and completely emotionless, appraising Han Li in a cold manner. If this face had been present on some kind of sinister ghostly being with a hideous body, then it wouldn't have been much of a shock. However, this woman possessed an extremely seductive figure with a head of flowing, gorgeous hair, creating the illusion that she was a fine beauty. As such, the stark contrast between expectations and reality naturally sent a bone-chilling sensation running down the beholder's spine. Low, ghostly sobs suddenly sounded from the white-robed woman's body, and clouds of white mist began to surface in the nearby area. These clouds of mist contained all types of ghostly figures, some of which were baring their fangs in a menacing display, some of which were letting loose ferocious roars, and all of them were putting on menacing displays. Han Li's heart jolted with shock, and azure light flashed from his spirit beast bracelet as he sprang into action to summon his weeping soul beast. However, an earth-shattering roar suddenly erupted deep within the mist at this moment, and the roar was so thunderously loud that Han Li's ears were ringing in its aftermath. Even the clouds of ghostly mist were surging erratically from that explosive roar, and the two women accompanying Han Li were completely petrified. That voice didn't belong to any of the 4 demon monarchs, so there was most likely some other powerful ghostly being nearby. Han Li's expression darkened as that thought occurred to him, yet before he had a chance to formulate a plan, an inexplicable turn of events suddenly unfolded. As soon as the white-robed woman heard this roar, green light flashed from within her eyes, and the ghostly weeping emanating from her body abruptly cut off. Following a brief hesitation, the white mist around its body quickly swept toward it as a gust of white winds, and it hurtled directly toward the direction where the roar had erupted from. Han Li naturally wasn't going to chase down this opponent, but his eyes were flashing with indecision as he cast his gaze toward the direction where the thunderous roar had just erupted from. "Brother Han, what should we—" Yan Li couldn't help want to ask something, but Han Li immediately cut her off. "Let's get out of here as quickly as we can. It's quite possible that one of the demon monarchs is nearby. Otherwise, that ghostly woman wouldn't have dropped everything to go and assist her companion." Yuan Yao and Yan Li found this to be quite a plausible theory, and the trio immediately flew away along with the ghostly soldiers. On this occasion, no more ghostly beings appeared to hinder them, and the mist up ahead was thinning at a noticeable rate. 2 hours later, the 3 of them finally emerged from the mist. All 3 of them were ecstatic to see this, and they immediately prepared to fly away into the distance. However, right at this moment, an unfamiliar male voice suddenly sounded from high above them. I didn't think that anyone would be able to make it out of my restriction. Looks like I underestimated your abilities." Han Li and the others were all shocked to hear this, and they raised their heads in unison, upon which all 3 of them were stunned by what they saw. In the air over 10,000 feet above the nearby ghostly mist, there were 2 groups of beings locked in a tense confrontation. One of those groups was comprised of none other than the white-haired beauty and Mu Qing, as well as a dozen or so high-grade demon beasts and the 8 yin armor ghost monarchs. There were thousands of ghostly soldiers situated further away, and they were all organized in an orderly formation as gusts of yin. Winds and bursts of baleful qi erupted into the air around them. However, they were faced with several times the number of beings they had on their side, comprising an army of around 7,000 to 8,000. All of these beings were around 20 feet tall and were clad in suits of crimson armor. They were wielding all types of weapons, such as sabers, spears, swords, halberds, bows, and crossbows, and all of them hovered completely motionlessly in mid-air, clearly indicating that this was an exceptionally well-trained army. What was even more surprising to Han Li was that there were over 100 azure war carriages among this crimson army. These war carriages appeared to be rather antiquated, with azure light flashing erratically over their surfaces. There were a dozen or so crimson-armored beings on each carriage, all of which were wielding long weapons. There were 2 strange black beasts with lion heads and worm bodies drawing each carriage, and they were also clad in suits of armor. At the forefront of the army were 3 generals seated atop different beastly steeds. The one who had just spoken was a man in a suit of purple armor with a pair of golden war hammers strapped to his back. Mu King and the white-haired beauty also turned their attention toward Han Li's trio. The white-haired beauty remained completely motionless, making it impossible to glean her thoughts. But Mu Qin wore a hint of a smile on her face, and Han Li's heart jolted upon seeing this as he lamented his terrible luck.